Hello and welcome to the Gormchymist and You. This is part of an ongoing series of deep dives into various aspects of the board game Kingdom Death Monster. My name is Fen, and before we get into the Gormchymist, I'd just like to say if you enjoy what I do here, please do like, comment, subscribe. You can also support these videos in the links in the description. I have a Patreon where you can support monthly, and also there's a Ko-fi if you want to just express one-off appreciation for some content. But the views and the likes and the comments, that's the stuff that really helps. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, because then with enough watch time I can actually monetize these videos and help pay the bills, because as everyone knows, the bills keep climbing up and up, and board gaming is not a cheap interest these days. So the Gormchymist is unlocked from defeating a level 1 Gorm, or the first time you defeat a Gorm, and it is one of 2 settlement locations that is unlocked. This means because the Gorm is a node 1 monster, you can unlock this location right there in Lantern Year 1 and start using it immediately, which is a nice benefit to have. Now, in this video, we're going to look at the Gorm Climate, which is a settlement event that occurs when you've introduced the Gorm to the campaign, and then will keep repeating all the way through the campaign. We're going to look at the alchemically inspired Gormchymist innovations, which are used to upgrade the Gormchymist and get access to more and more powerful potions. We're also going to just do a brief look at alchemy as a whole, because I think it's a fascinating subject, and I want to just kind of highlight how well it is done in this. It's not just like a little bit of a surface sort of, paying nothing more than surface impressions towards alchemy. There's obviously been research and reading done into alchemy to at least thematically tie everything together a bit more strongly, which I think is nice, and I did want to briefly highlight that. And then we will go through all the Gormchymist, the potions, all these results. We'll talk about the mechanics and all that. So let's start with Gorm Climate, which is here. Gorm Climate is a settlement event, so this is going to be in your settlement event deck if you have the Gorm as a quarry. In addition, it's introduced during the first Lantern Year when the Gorm appears. Now, it is a repeating event, so as you can see on the very first line, you're going to keep adding this to the next year of the timeline, and on and on and on and on. That's going to continue until you can get rid of it, which is done by a certain innovation and defeating a Gorm, which I'll talk about just at the end of discussing Gorm Climate. Now, Gorm Climate isn't automatically a punishment. The 1 to 3 result is the really bad one. It destroys all of your resources in your settlement unless you dismantle an innovation. So the 2 main ways this is handled is either by, first of all, if you don't have any resources because it's the early game and you've spent them all, doesn't matter if the rain would destroy them because it can't destroy what's not there. The other method that some people use is if this does happen, they will dismantle Negredo, because you get Negredo from defeating a Gorm, and then they will go hunt a Gorm to get Negredo back. So I don't like doing that. I think it's better to be proactive and just not have any innovation, any resources for this to affect. But you can, it may be, it depends on your playstyle and what you prefer to do. The 4 to 7 result asks if you have Hovel, and you can get Hovel from the Gorm introductory event, so you may automatically have it. If you do, you get a minor bonus. If you don't, you get this is probably, I think, the worst punishment, which is stripping all insanity and making survivors skip their next hunt, which is effectively giving them PTSD, the disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, but they can't remove it with trepanning, so they're just like, they can't go out next year, and you'll have to alternate. So that's my least favourite result. And then on the storytelling, now 8 to 10, it doesn't really matter if you have storytelling or not, it just affects the flavour of bonus. The really neat part of it is as long as a survivor you pick has 0 hunt XP, it doesn't matter how much understanding / courage they have, you can just keep giving it to the same survivor over and over and level them up to get access to matchmaker and stuff like that. So it's pretty good. It's pretty good. You can get rid of Gorm Climate though permanently, not from the deck but permanently from your timeline, by innovating the Music Innovations Song of the Brave and then killing a Gorm, and then your survivors will sing a lullaby, soothe all the angry baby elephant alchemical factory disco ball anglerfish, and the weather will clear up. The Gorm has like a fairly big sub-theme of what it's like to be a parent to a small child, hence the Gorm like retching up and throwing up and being very like temperamental and suffering from stuff like hiccups. It's almost like it was designed by someone who was recently a parent and needed a form of catharsis, which I think, based on the timeline, is actually not entirely untrue. Either way, it's thematically really neat that in order to deal with this that's causing all these problems to the survivors, you have to go and sing a song to the Gorms to get them to just stop and give you some peace and quiet. Excellent. Just really, really great. Okay, next up, we'll take a look at the innovation line. So this is the Gormchymist innovation line. This is based on the alchemical names, so they're exactly translated. Right, sorry, I'm a little bit just... I had to pause the recording because we had a delivery arrive and Pamsha, our dog, decided she wanted to jump in the delivery man's van on the front seat and go for a drive. So I had to catch her and bring her back inside. She's a good girl, but she gets a bit excited about going places in cars because that's always where she gets to go for a WALK. I can't say it out loud, otherwise she'll start barking, asking for one. Another one today. Anyway, so where were we? Alchemy, natural philosophy, proto-scientific kind of tradition. The concept was taking materials, certain types, and purifying them and perfecting them. And then the big goal was either the transmutation of base metals into gold or creating the magnum opus, great work, the Philosopher's Stone. So all 4 of these Gormchymist potions are named after the very processes from alchemy. They are Negredo, which is the process of decomposition and decay, hence we have a picture of a head in the jar, in the fluids. Albedo, or whiteness, the purification, which you can see in this case is the skull being brought down to the bone, the whiteness of the bone and all the impurities leaving the jar. Citranus, it is the absorption of the purity of yellow light from within the being, or in this case from a lantern to the skull. And then Rubedo, redness, which was linked with gold and the Philosopher's Stone. So there's a nice little bit of extra theme baked into these innovations that makes them just a little bit richer and more enjoyable to interact with. So I could talk more about alchemy because I got quite fascinated with it as a child after reading a book from the author of the Deptford Mice trilogy. It's a book called The Alchemist's Cat, and it's all about how the villain of the Deptford Mice trilogy came into being. Anyway, the writer, he's a British author, he's called Robin Jarvis, and also did the Whitby Witches series of books, which really haunted me as a child. It's a lot of dark fantasy. I think it's part of why I'm here and playing this game is I had a fascination with that kind of stuff when I was younger, thanks to my older cousins giving me books like that. Well, enough about recommendations of UK children's authors, let's talk about these 4 innovations. So the first thing to note is every single one that you get adds an additional dice to your rolls on the Gormchymist. That'll make more sense when we just look at how the Gormchymist itself works, but it's enough to say that you want to have all 4 of these developed. Additionally, you want to get them out of the innovation deck anyway, because they can get in the way and reduce the odds of you getting other important innovations. There is a special innovation, this blue bar at the bottom of the location here, where you spend a strange resource and a Gorm brain to innovate the next Gormchymist innovation. This is what you should use every Gorm brain you get for, because anytime you can innovate something without having to use your once per year innovation is absolutely fantastic. And you can spend strange resources like Acanthus or similar, which, if you're playing the core game still, or you have the Screaming Antelope, it's fairly easy to get that kind of strange resource in decent numbers. Okay, Negredo's biggest impact is it gives you +1 survival limit. That's super useful. Early on, you will be kind of hitting the max cap on survival fairly quickly. The higher your survival limit gets as well, the more you can push and fight monsters earlier than normal. So you can grab Surge, or you can grab Paint, Dash, Inner Lantern, and that will let you push the envelope. There's a lot of strategies that are more advanced where you do rely on survival actions picked up early on to hunt monsters that are far more dangerous than you normally would. It's not something I recommend for your first few games, but if you are interested in really pushing your personal skill limits and as hard as you can, then stuff like Negredo can help you do that with its extra survival limit. The Endeavour is just not worth using. It either loses you a bone resource or it turns 3 bone into a dense bone. Dense bone is not that valuable, so you just wouldn't do this. What do you need a dense bone for? 1 will let you make the Greater Gax. I almost said counterweighted axe. Greater Gax, which is a very good weapon from the Gormery, but usually you'll get dense bone through that. And if you don't get the Greater Gax, there's like other very good weapons from the Gormery that you will end up using that fulfill a same or similar role. So just don't bother using this innovation. Endeavour on this innovation, which I think is fine because Negredo is meant to be the bottommost process of this entire thing, so it not being very good. Sorry, I punched my mic, tapped it. That's fine. Next up we have Whiteness, Albedo. Here we go. So this is the next step up. Again, we get another dice on our Gormchymist rolls, adding an average of 5.5 to the total that we'll get. 5.5 is the average for a D10. It's not a super helpful number because you can't roll 5.5, but it helps when you're trying to figure out the bell curve of rolling multiple dice at the same time. So Albedo's ability is 2 endeavours to use, and you get to roll a dice. 1 to 2, you lose 1 level of weapon proficiency. 3 to 9, you can turn 4 organs into a Gorm brain. On the 10+, you can change 1 negative attribute modifier of your choice to 0 from whatever negative it was. This is actually quite good. You don't want to use it if the 1 to 2 is going to mess up returning survivors with weapon proficiency, but if you have survivors who've all gone out because they're a fresh batch, or you've sent them out because of, like, maybe you're looking to send 4 0 hunt XP 0 weapon proficiency survivors out in order for one of them to get the Twilight Sword, then it doesn't matter. But this actually 4 organs into a Gorm brain resource I think is pretty decent. It's expensive, but it does give you an immediate free brain unlock, free quote unquote additional brain unlock. So I think it's something that you will use occasionally, but it's expensive and you do want to play around that negative. I'd rather not spend a lifetime reroll on this if I could. Also, I guess if all 4 survivors died and you suffered defeat, then you can roll on this as long as you have the organs in storage, because there's no return of survivors. But that's kind of a worst case scenario. Our next one is the third, which is Citrinitus. So this is the yellowness again is +1 survival limit, making this one of the really good Gorm innovations. It'll put Rubedo into the innovation deck, and for 3 endeavours you can roll on this table and either give all returning survivors -1 permanent evasion, or remove 1 broken severe injury from each returning survivor. The wording's a little wonky there. I don't think you activate this one. There's very few broken severe injuries that you can't just live with, or bed will help you get rid of many of them without this kind of risk. Or sometimes you can face the hand and just get broken injuries fixed that way. The negatives, the 3 endeavour cost, you're not activating this one, so you're mainly getting this for the additional dice in the Gormchymist and the survival limit, which makes it still a good innovation. It's just not a good endeavour. Our final one is Rubedo, redness. So, or in this case, we got our little reference to how important regality and majesty and kings are in the setting. There's no additional ones added in because you've successfully cleared them all out of the innovation deck. Rolling on the table is this one costs 4 endeavours to activate, so I don't think you're going to be doing it, especially because again you've got the 20% chance of getting a negative. It's not a huge one because hemophobia can be removed with trepanning, but that is a very laborious process, so you don't really want to have it. The 3 to 8 is +1 courage and a skip of the next hunt. I can't see myself wanting to do that in most situations, very considering how much it costs to activate. The 9+, inverting your attribute modifiers on all returning survivors, and it's not even a choice which ones you get to invert or not, is kind of terrible, because when are you taking survivors out with nothing but negative attribute modifiers? I don't think you're doing that. As such, Rubedo I don't think is very good as a endeavour, but it is still a passive upgrade to the Gormchymist table rolls. So that's our Gormchymist Innovations, very thematic. Couple of survival limit increases, which is great, but the endeavours for the most part I don't really bother with using. So let's look at the Gormchymist itself. The main mechanic here, apart from this special Innovate, is transmutation. So you'll spend 2 organs of any kind, and you will roll the number of dice on this table, 1 plus every Gormchymist innovation you have. So initially, if you just have Negredo, you'll roll 2d10. If you also have Albedo, then you'd roll 3d10, and so on and so forth, up to the maximum, which is 5d10, 1 for the base roll and 4 for each of the Gormchymist innovations. If you're trying to estimate roughly what you're going to get on a return, the thing to do with d10s is consider the average roll is 5.5, so 2d10 on average is going to roll 11, 3d10 on average will roll 16.5 or 16 to 17, and so you can plan accordingly and know how much, what the likely odds of what you're going to get from the old organ slot machine are going to be. The worst result will give you a random Gorm resource. Gorm resources are quite good, and you might pop a brain out from doing that, which would be nice. So it's not terrible, but definitely you've turned 2 resources into 1 resource, which isn't ideal. Otherwise, you can get unlocked potions, or at the top end you'll get Gormite. Now, and one thing to remember and see is this here, you can archive 1 Gormchymist potion to reroll 1 dice result. So any potion you get that's not useful, you can still spend here to reroll 1 of the dice to try and get what you're looking for in specifics, which is something you're not going to do all the time, but it's worth remembering. Now, let's walk up this table one at a time and look at each of the potions, shall we? So, for the 7 to 12 roll, deck, here we go, you get the healing potion. So, the healing potion, item, consumable, fragile, has a down-facing red. This is actually a relevant affinity, because it can connect to the knuckle shield and then that can activate your red affinity for Gormite armor. It can also connect to a counterweighted axe if you wanted to use healing potion, counterweighted axe, leather shield, and Gormite armor for a build there. So that's nice. And this doesn't archive itself until the end of the showdown if you're going to use it. The ability is, at the end of the showdown, if you suffered any permanent injuries, you can archive this card and remove one of your choice, so that has synergy with how Gormite armor likes to operate anyway. Gormite armor is a armor set that kind of goes, hey, don't worry so much about armor points, we're going to regenerate severe injuries when we take them. So it's a different playstyle, it's a high risk playstyle, but it is very fun, and the healing potion can be a bit of that. I wouldn't go out of my way to make healing potions, but if I get them, I will put them into gear grids. Ultimately, they're kind of not as good dried acanthus. They lose the extra survival when departing, but they get this red affinity that you can make use of. So I think healing potions are fine and definitely worth using when you generate them. Next up, we have the Wisdom Potion. This is for the 3 to 18 result. This is our Node 1 monster hit location scouting card. There's so far been one hit location scouting mechanic in every single Node 1 monster that's been released to date. So it seems to be a theme for Node 1 monsters. The Wisdom Potion is, I think it's not hyperbole to state that it's one of the best gear cards in the entire game. It passively lets you play the entire showdown with the top card of the hit location deck revealed. This means you always know what the top card of the hit location deck is, so you have information for any one of your attacks. Your average attack, which is a 2 dice attack with 6+ accuracy, normally hits just 1 out of the 2 dice. That's your most typical result, will be 1 hit. So the Wisdom Potion is perfect for that. The Wisdom Potion also gives you perfect information if you're playing with slow weapons like the Rib Blade or the Zanbato or similar. Because they're slow, they only roll 1 dice, so you always know exactly the attack you're going to line up against the given hit location. Really powerful, really, really useful. Information is power, and this just, all it does is it sits in your gear grid, it doesn't cost you any actions, it just says, hi, could I have 2 blue affinities, including this puzzle blue affinity connected. It's a phenomenally good piece of gear. I think, in my opinion, it's better than the Cat Eye Circlet. At a minimum, it is about the same level of power, but personally I think it's better because of how good certain grand weapons are and how well they line up with critical wound farming strategies. So this is really, really good. About the only negative is it has the other keyword, which has some limitations for certain survivor types or other bits and pieces. Occasionally other is referenced in texts. Not only is this on par with the Cat Eye Circlet, it actually has some nice synergies with it. So obviously it's a bit weird to go, well, the Cat Eye Circlet, I activate it and I look at the top 3 cards of the hit location deck, but I already know what one of them is, so it's cutting into a third of the Cat Eye Circlet utility, but the combination between them is that the Wisdom Potion reduces the amount you need to activate the Cat Eye Circlet, so it lets you use the Cat Eye Circlet just for situations where you look at the top card and you go, I don't want to deal with that one because it's the trap and I want to bury it for a little bit, or where you're like, okay, this weapon I'm using is a little higher speed, so I need to use the Cat Eye Circlet specifically for my 3-speed survivor, but everyone else is on slow weapons, so they can just use the Wisdom Potion. So it's not even overkill to have both of them in the same hunting party, and you'll see builds that do that. Last of all, the Wisdom Potion combos with Lucky Charm, and Lucky Charm combos with Deadly, and all of that combos with Blue Affinity, so it all plays together. And in the Gormary video you'll see a sample crit farming early game build. It's just very cookie cutter, Rawhide, Deadly Weapon, Blue Affinities, job done. You certainly don't need more than 1 Wisdom Potion, so you'll likely spend the remaining ones in order to get rerolls, but maybe you keep 1 in backup if you're concerned about losing the first Wisdom Potion. Either way, don't take more than one of them out on a hunt, with the exception of if you really need this Blue Affinity. Okay, on the 19 to 24 result, we have the Steadfast Potion. So this is a heavy consumable. It has an up-facing red, so that will connect to certain cards, like the Healing Potion, or more notably, the Knuckle Shield. And when you ignore a hit with block, you gain +1 strength token. When you're knocked down, you lose all your +1 strength tokens. This is an overt designed synergy with the Knuckle Shield, because the Knuckle Shield likes to block. It also blocks once it's attacked, but it has a very low strength of 1. So the Steadfast Potion will let you build up your strength points, so then you can start attacking with the Knuckle Shield. And it will, of course, let you trigger the Knuckle Shield ability to get block back on and continue rinse repeat and gradually scale up your strength. It's great for somebody who's early game training up their shield mastery. It's also useful for survivors who are using weapons that have a lower strength, because you can run a shield, you can block, and then eventually have enough strength to start attacking. So that creates a potential, say, dagger or whip and shield tank build using the Steadfast Potion. It is worth noting that that is a slow build. So you would be playing it if your plan is for the showdown to run a bit longer. So ultimately, I think this is at its best when it's used in combination early game with the Knuckle Shield, but there are potentials for other builds further on. Definitely a great potion for tanks as a whole. The next one, which is our 25 to 30 roll, is the Power Potion. So the Power Potion is super interesting. It has an up-facing green affinity. This is kind of not super common, but it is present on the round leather shield. And the ability is you consume, and once per showdown you gain +1 strength token for each green affinity that you have. So this is another way of taking weapons that have low strength and pushing them up very hard to make them viable weapons because you like the abilities. A classic, which you will see in the Gormite build section, is running it with the clubs from the weapon crafter, because those clubs have really good abilities but very bad strength. And this can help change that. There's also a whole category of survivors who they don't even run armor, and they run a ton of green affinities for various bonuses and effects and shields and whatnot, and they put the grid all together. I will probably do some videos on those kind of builds separately because they require a lot of different expansions to pull them together. The Power Potion can be a piece of the puzzle there. It's really good, and it's something that I could see using in multiples. Even if you're just getting +2 strength from this consumption ability, that's usually enough to push a weapon from being not great to being potent against a particular monster. And it's worth noting that leather armor alone with monster grease, that's 3 green affinities all by itself. You don't even need to connect at the Power Potion to benefit in that front. But you might do, you could not run the leather shield, you could run monster grease and leather armor, and you'd have those affinities there to take advantage of that. So lots of things can be done with the Power Potion. It is just essentially a really, really good monster tooth necklace, and I've discussed previously how important weapon strength is, and if it's behind, then it'll fall off hard, and the Power Potion's offering a way for you to keep using interesting or pet weapons for longer. Our last potion is the 31 to 36 roll. This is the Life Elixir. It's got the stinky keyword, which does have some relevance, and it's got this lovely H.R. Geiger inspired design. This is each showdown, the first time you die from a severe injury, ignore that injury. So this is a kind of not great ability. Obviously not dying is wonderful, but for the most part you shouldn't be getting yourself in a position where you are going to die, because that would be silly. However, the Gorman armor ethos involves taking severe injuries, so having a life elixir might be really beneficial because that lets you not die. Obviously as well, if you have stuff that modifies the severe injury roll, such as tough, then the life elixir becomes better because it needs to activate less often, making its activations more impactful when they do happen. So there are places where the life elixir may turn up in a build. The big problem here is that this doesn't do anything else. It doesn't give you any survival, it doesn't give you any stat boosts, and it doesn't even give you any affinities. Honestly, if this provided some of the affinities that helped Gormite armor activate, like it had some red affinities on it or a down-facing blue affinity, then we would be seeing this more in builds. But ultimately, the lack of affinities and the fact that you've got a once per showdown ability that may not even trigger holds this back a lot. So it's for very specific situations. You need to be thinking about building around it, but you can combine it with loads of green affinities and the undeathable green charm to make a survivor who's quite unlikely to die, which, you know, there is fun and value to be had in playing that way. But it's just this, I hope this gets revised a little bit and gains some affinities in Campaigns of Death, but we'll see. It just should be doing a bit more, considering it's meant to be the top end potion. Okay, so our final roll is the 37 plus. It's not a potion, it's Gormite. So Gormite is a scrap iron strange resource. It's the toughest stuff known to man. It is this world's version of unobtainium / vibranium / adamantium. You know, it's a really special resource. It is used to make the black sword. It is used in green armor, but significantly, it is also a scrap and an iron. So this gives you the ability to turn organs into iron during the campaign. Once you've gotten everything else you need and you've made yourself a black sword, or two, you know, however many you wanted to use, you can go, oh, I don't just need to convert scrap into iron, I can also try and convert organs into iron, and it doesn't even cost me any endeavors. That's what I meant to say, endeavors. It doesn't cost any endeavors. So that's something to think about, and it's a reason why you would keep using the Gormchymist year after year after year. It's pretty fantastic. So, Gormite. Definitely worth it, and a reason to get all of these unlocked. And the black sword, as we'll look at in the Gormery video, is incredible. Finally, just to highlight it again, special innovate, spend your Gorm brains here to get the next Gorm innovation. Always use this until you've got every single one out the deck. You really don't want to be making Gormery innovations via your normal innovation. So brains. Oh boy, I'm terribly sorry. Wow, off we go. Yeah, I managed to drag instead of click. Brains in here. Okay, right. So that is the Gormchymist in full. And just to summarise, it's you want to with Gorm Climate, you want to try not to leave resources in the settlement storage, but you can dismantle Negrado and then hunt a Gorm to manage that. On these Gorm Innovations, try to special innovate them into play rather than innovate them normally. Gormchymist is very strong. The highlights are Wisdom Potion is probably the best potion all round. Steadfast Potion, one of those for a tank, is pretty good. Power Potion's great for certain green affinity based builds. The Healing Potion you will use with, especially if you need the down facing red affinity, and the life elixir is a bit too situational for my preferences, and I don't tend to use it very often. And Gormite is fantastic, so good that you'll maybe, like, once you've got loads of resources, you'll just chuck organs in here to try and make Gormite. And you can always spend potions to try and reroll, because you'll generate some potions you don't need, and you can try and make more Gormite. So that is the Gormchymist, and I think it's a very good system. I think it's a very interesting system, and I think it's a very thematically rich and unique settlement location, and I think it's immense fun to engage with, and never forget that you can make iron through this location. That is worth a lot all in itself. And so that's it on this very scattered recording, because thanks to the dog trying to go for a drive. But until next time, unless I see you out in the darkness, happy hunting.